Welcome to the ECS podcast. I'm Rocky Calvo, Executive Director of the Electrochemical Society. The purpose of this podcast is to connect the dots between the sciences, our everyday lives, and the sustainability of the planet. Yue Kuo's work in solid-state science has yielded many innovations, and he's made a tremendous mark on the scientific community. Since his arrival at ECS in 1995, he's received our prestigious Fellow honor, and he was recently named Vice President of the Society. He's been an editor of our flagship journal, and now the Journal of Solid-State Science and Technology, for about 8 years, 9 years maybe. Additionally, he's received the ECS Gordon E. Moore Medal for Outstanding Achievement in Solid-State Science and Technology. He just received that award in Chicago this year. So Yue, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to have the opportunity to communicate with ECS member and non-ECS member in U.S. and around the world.
Well, we like to begin these by talking about your scientific interests, when they started, how they occurred. So can we take us way back when you first started thinking about getting involved or becoming a scientist or showing an interest in science and how that all happened?
It's actually interesting, and talk about study science. It's strongly related to the background which I came from. And if you notice, a lot of people at my age and come from Asia and usually study science and engineering. There are reasons for that. About the time I was born or before I was born, my background, I'm a Chinese. When I was born, before I was born, there was one big news. The first Chinese ever get a Nobel Prize. So that stimulates the society to generate people interest in study science. And also, since childhood, when we were told, actually, science is the most important field to improve the society. So very naturally, under that environment, later on I'll talk about the background, how do I get into the university, what kind of university I get in. But in that society, under that environment, very naturally, people are going to study science.
That's really very interesting because the winner, the Nobel Prize winner, do you recall which scientific discipline that was in?
It's a physics. I assume both the winner are still alive. And they are retired, but both get a physics prize.
So you, as a young person, but I think you characterized it as people from all over China had such a great deal of not only respect but admiration and visibility for this person who achieved this thing, and it directed your interest in wanting to be a scientist. And it's almost like this was a person who was a star in your country to emulate.
Exactly. Actually, that's the winner was two, not just one, two professors. And one, later is interesting, one eventually retired from Columbia University, that's where I graduated from. The other one retired from, I believe, SUNY Stony Brook.
Well, you began to mention your now formal education, so you had an interest that was stimulated when you were very young. Did that continue through high school? Did you have a mentor, someone who pushed you in a certain direction that led to next things in your bachelor's degree?
Okay, that's a very interesting topic. Actually, I can talk for a long time, but just to summarize it. The environment which I was brought up related especially to the school I graduated, and I graduated college from National Taiwan University. Actually, my high school, I also graduated the best high school in Taiwan. The environment I have is competitive environment. That's why you find it very common in a lot of Asian countries, very competitive. What I mean competitive is when you go to the high school, you go to college, usually not apply, just by competition, by exam. Just give you an example. When I graduated from high school, we have one exam a year. All the students who want to go to college take the same exam, same day, for same 2 days. So what happened is, and this is not only for college, for high school it's the same. Actually start from kindergarten. When kindergarten, people want to go to good kindergarten, that small kids, they start competition, they have exam. Then junior high school, people have exam, senior high school exam. So it's a screening process. So this process, there are advantage and disadvantage. The good part is you go to get good education, good university, good high school. It's based on your academic achievements. No influence of family background. And rich or poor doesn't matter. Depend on your academic record. I can give you some interesting example. One is that when at my time, the president of Taiwan, his son cannot go to college because he didn't pass the entrance exam. He didn't have good grade. But at the same time, we know there are people from welfare family gets to the best university, National Taiwan University, because his academic achievement is good. And there, of course, no system is perfect. This system is in some way imperfect in other ways. For example, there was one Nobel Prize winner, not the first two. Later on, there was one Nobel Prize winner. He could not get into the National Taiwan University because his grade was not high enough for the exam. But it doesn't stop him. Later on, he got Nobel Prize. And on the other hand, also some students, this system pushes some students good in preparing exam, not creative. Later on, people also criticize that one. But I would say, in general, the education from National Taiwan University or the education system which I received are very good for me because it prepare me for the competition for the rest of my life. And I feel for a person's future success, university is not most important. But it does, if you get good education, give you good preparation. Whether you're successful or not, there are many other factors.
Certainly agree with that. Now, you went on to get a bachelor's at National Taiwan University, and you mentioned how competitive it was to even have an opportunity to do that, but you were given that opportunity. So while you earned that opportunity, I should say, and while you were there, did you encounter a great faculty that then guided you, on to other things?
Yes, and the system, National Taiwan University, that time, again, society changes university, but at least that time, that's a very open society. The open society means students have a lot of freedom. You study, right, but besides study, you have a lot of freedom. For example, I was involved in some student society. I was in the society of drawing, painting for all my college period time. So I learned a lot from this, unrelated to my scientific training, but that's also helped me for preparing for later on getting into the society, how to deal with people, and of course have always been interested in art. And I think for long term, hopefully someday I can still pick up my art work.
Well, that's an interesting subject on its own. I think I'm going to stay with science for now and ask you then, what led you to Columbia University beyond National Taiwan University? So I'm assuming it was still the scientific pursuits.
Yeah, and again, that's interesting. The Columbia in the Chinese history is very famous. It's had a big influence for the 20th century. It's older China. Before 1949, and at turning of 20th century, there are some Columbia alumni who were very successful in China, and so the reputation is very good. So when I graduated from college, and after I had to serve military for 2 years, then I decided to go to foreign country to study, and I have chance to go different countries, and then I applied for U.S. universities. I got 5 scholarships, and I really appreciate the opportunity, so I decided to come to America. And of that, Columbia is the one which, according to my past experience, that's really exciting university. And at Columbia, didn't disappoint me. In a way, it's the system. The Columbia is a very open university. It's one of the most liberal university in this country, or probably in the world. So over there, I learned a lot, and learn not only in my own area, my research topic, and not only about my the department which involved. I got exposed to different kind of topics, which with different people. Because Columbia, you probably know, there's some of very famous scholars. So that period of time, I used the opportunity to contact a lot of people and gain a lot of knowledge. Later on, many years later, in my research field, in my life, I can utilize that. So that's the experience which I have, because that's environment.
You're right. Columbia University, I'm aware of some of the scholars there, but that's primarily because of the connection with ECS, which is really a quite significant one. Columbia University, through the role of the elected secretary, where 2 of them basically were the official and unofficial leader of ECS for many years in the decades of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. The 2 individuals are Colin Fink and Henry Linford, both famous faculty members from Columbia University. And essentially, Columbia University was the headquarters where the society operated out of the secretary's office. So we have those connections, and it was interesting to us to see that you pursued additional degrees at Columbia University. But you said something very interesting. You said that Columbia was very well known in Taiwan. You said there, I got the impression there's some kind of connection or overlap to Columbia University and your experience as an undergrad, maybe. Did I understand that correctly?
And actually, not only Taiwan. Another interest I have is on history. I always joke about, if I don't study science, probably I'll major in history. The reason is, in the high school, my history grade was very good. The worst grade I got was 99, most are 100. But actually I choose the science. In the history, and for example, I can give you an example. Columbia graduated in early 20th century. They were China's prime minister. And just immediately after overthrow of the last dynasty, there was a prime minister who was only, I believe at that time, about 30 years old. He graduated from Columbia Law School, and he became prime minister. And there are many other people also graduate from Columbia. In the history of China, it's very famous. So that has a big influence for people's impression on that specific university.
That's really interesting to me. That's why I enjoy these podcasts so much. Something I thought I knew a bit about Columbia University, and I had not heard about those connections to China and Taiwan. Well, let's move beyond the formal education part of your life and career, and start talking about the work that you began. What was your first position after college and the military?
Okay. The time when I graduated from college and from Taiwan, that time everyone had no choice. As you are male, you have to go to serve in military. Today it's different. That time everyone had to serve 2 years on military, and again, even serve in military is competitive. That means that time you graduate from college, you have to pass the exam. If you pass the exam, you can become officer. If you don't pass the exam, you become non-officer soldiers, and a spatial field, and it's even more difficult. I give you example. That time, probably people graduate from chemistry, chemical engineering. There are several hundred, probably 1,000. Only 32 people, I still remember, pass exam, become chemical warfare officer for the training. And then, luckily, then not only I get to the field, I was sent to the factory, military factory. That's related to ECS, believe it or not, because the factory are making batteries, dry batteries. So I was working back, so I got involved with the electrochemistry very early in the 1974 actually, 1974 until 1976, and work in the battery factory. I still remember the work I was doing, involved first in quality control, then I was involved in R&D, and I was doing research development on a new type battery, the seawater battery. The battery which is like in powder, but when you soak in water, exposed to water, it will generate electricity. Now most of us, we know what that's for. That's for very special area, for related to the sea. One of them is torpedo, and the other one is for the ships in the emergency case, because that can be stored for long. So the battery, I remember. The other day I was thinking about life sometimes is determined not by us. That time in the factory, and I went to the library. I don't remember anything else. I only remember one thing. I saw Journal of Electrochemical Society, JECS. That's the first time I get contact with JES. So that's it in my mind deeply. And so I started from electrochemistry on battery, and I first contact with the professional journal was JECS.
That's interesting. First of all, that you ended up working on battery technology, of course, which is the classic electrochemistry. But then you encountered a journal, and this is in the 70s, right?
Right.
Which was at a time where it was incredibly difficult to get our subscriptions made available through China to Chinese institutions of any kind, and yet we know there was some reproduction of the journals that was getting them dispersed and distributed somehow, and you saw one.
Yeah, actually that's why I think it's genuine. The reason is the one. Remember 1970s, that time U.S. had military in Taiwan. I believe that factory original strategy had some relationship with U.S. military. So those are the genuine, I believe, the journals, the genuine influence from.
They probably had the regular subscription as opposed to the reproductions that were going around. Yeah, that's a good thing for us. You were introduced to the Electrochemical Society through our journal. So you did your time in the military, and now you then began to pursue a career first in corporate America. In the Silicon Valley, I think, is where you started?
Yeah, and after military service, then I came to U.S. for graduate school, Columbia. After I graduated, I worked in several areas, and eventually end up in Silicon Valley and in IBM. And this too, also again interesting. It's Silicon Valley where I work in IBM, totally different culture. So it's, I was very lucky. I have the experience of both culture. Silicon Valley, when I started in the early 80s, that time the Intel was only 10 years old or 12 years old, early stage. Silicon Valley had many companies, including the company which I work. But Silicon Valley is very dynamic. It's changing so much. I remember that time I worked in a computer company, which was the third largest computer company. And today, very few people never heard about.
When was that?
In the 84 to 87. That company is called Data General. Data General, in the early stage, the biggest company is IBM, computer company. Second is digital. Third one, data general. Though the early stage computer company, they have their own semiconductor facility. And data general semiconductor fab was in Silicon Valley. So it's a small fab, a few hundred people, but they do almost everything. That time was NMOS, before CMOS time. NMOS, then bipolar. Later on comes CMOS. And so when working there, I was very lucky. I got a chance to learn all this because it's a not gigantic fab. So I have opportunity to do my work and opportunity to learn from everyone else. So they set a very good foundation for me about semiconductor. Start very early stage.
Yeah, so sounds actually very exciting, and you were with one of the real players in Data General. How long were you there, and then you moved on to academia not too much longer, into the early 90s, I think?
Actually, after the Silicon Valley, I found one issue. The Silicon Valley is typical common California culture. That means usually companies, all Silicon Valley companies are rush to push out product, and so the work most are on the development. There was very few research. So I found out myself is interested in research. So that time I transferred to IBM, Yorktown Heights, because IBM Yorktown Heights is very famous for its research. And so later on I moved to IBM. I stayed there for a long time, for almost 11, 12 years in Yorktown, because they can do research. And that's what, when I stay in IBM, I have a lot of opportunity to do research, to develop my more fundamental work on this in the semiconductor in general area, including thin film transistor, plasma processing, thin films, etc. And so those are two totally different kind of training, but it does train me well for this area, from fundamental point of view and from practical production point of view.
Well, so I think that makes my question even more interesting, because you went east to IBM. You said Yorktown Heights at a time when IBM had huge investments and activity. They had research in East Fishkill, in T.J. Wasson, the Poughkeepsie, Essex Junction, all over New York. They had a tremendous number of people involved in ECS doing work in the areas that you just described. So that must have been a booming time to be involved in the field that you were pursuing.
That's exactly right. That IBM that time, especially Yorktown, and I remember 80s. I went to Yorktown. Believe it or not, nowadays people feel very strange. But that time, 80s, I remember go to Yorktown. Basically, the company won the people get Nobel Prize for Yorktown. So those works, and I have colleagues whose name was in the textbook. And the high time is Yorktown is part of research division, and had about 5 Nobel Prize winners. And so that's a good time for IBM research.
And you stayed with IBM until when?
1998. I went there in 1987, and I left in 1998. And the reason I left is like many other people left. We want to change the environment, because the obvious company seems to have a change. It's a way of thinking of doing business. So actually, a few batch of people left company in goodwill. Still have a company have a good blessing. I remember when I left, personnel talked to me and said they're really blessing and they want to keep good relationship. So those people went to universities. I went to Texas A&M universities. Other people to different universities.
But it wasn't just IBM. By my experience with people here, in ECS, there were I mean, we saw the same type of thing happening at Bell Laboratories, at places like General Electric, RCA. It seemed like corporate research wasn't what it used to be.
Yeah, I think there's a society changing. We can later, if we have opportunity, we can talk about it. This is in some way the progress of society in U.S. in the not only U.S. in developed country, they play different role with the time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good time when I was in Yorktown, really.
Yes, I think we're very fortunate to have had experienced that when doing work, as you were kind of alluding to, with 5 Nobel Prize winner was quite an experience. But then you moved on to an academic career, and so tell us that story. And what did you do? Where'd you go?
Okay, and after IBM, I went to Texas A&M University, and this university, and not interesting. All my background from National Talent University, Columbia University, and I later on stayed in Berkeley, UC Berkeley, for a period of time. But those universities are famous for liberal culture. Then I went to Texas A&M, totally different university. But Texas A&M is a coming up university. It's a university that's climbing the ladder drastically. And the university has a desire to become one of the best research university. So they spend a lot of effort, recruit very good people, have many good students, and push very hard in the ranking of a university, doing good research and educating good students. So that's the time I think it looks a good place to go. So I went to A&M. So
in what department?
The department which I was appointed mainly in chemical engineering, and I had a joint appointment in electrical engineering, later on material science. But physically I'm located in chemical engineering. But my student is composed of chemical engineering, electrical engineering, material science, and some students from industrial engineering. The reason is this, doing semiconductor, I told students early stage, if you come to my group, basic important is you are doing semiconductor. And semiconductor is an interdisciplinary field. And that actually is very important. You have to set your mind clear. You cannot tell people, because I have all the industry experience, I learned the way. Once you go to work, your company needs you to solve this problem. You cannot tell company, say, wait, I'm an engineering, electrical engineer, I don't know how to make a transistor. Or I'm chemical engineer, I don't know what transistor works. You have to know at least the fundamental things. So over there, I told the student, you come to my group, you are semiconductor, and you have to learn all the basic things in addition to your thesis. So the basic involves 3 things: materials, process, and device. Then that proved very successful because all my students are very hot. They go many occasions, which is employing manager. They met me in different occasions. They told me, how do you train your students? How come they know that much? I told them that's philosophy. They have to learn as a semiconductor person, not just one specific narrow field.
That's what you just described is, I think, the common theme that one way or another we always get to in these podcasts when we talk about the science itself. It's the interdisciplinary nature of electrochemistry and how that impacts I guess how it creates the opportunities in research, and it goes to why electrochemistry has such a significant impact on things like renewable energy. It's all built around these many disciplines to solve problems. And you couldn't have described it better, but I think it is interesting that's again, it's we always go there when we talk about the science that you're working in. The students that you said you've while at Texas A&M, one of the things that attracted you was the university's commitment to improving its research. And one of the ways, obviously, is to get the best students in the world. And so, where did you go get them? What are they like? And how did you motivate them? And are they different now than they were when you started?
And the student usually university, when it's build a reputation, good student naturally will come to apply. And the same thing as research. And every year in my group, I receive at least 100 applicants. Just direct contact me, want to be in my group. Of course, I can only accept at most 1 or 2. But in other words, I have a lot of choice. Choose a good student. When I say good student, a student with strong motivation. That's the key for, I think, not for us as graduate student. I think for personal career, I saw almost all the successful people usually succeed. It's because they have strong motivation to achieve something. So all the years I've been there, 17 and a half years, and I was lucky. The students are usually very good. They have strong motivation and to learn. And the young people, the brain like a sponge. They learn everything. And I also told, from my experiences, I told students, now whatever your background, I mentioned about your semiconductor, and don't restrict yourself to only a very narrow range, and communicate with other students. I on purpose mix all students with all different backgrounds, no matter what they eventually degree with double E, chemical engineering, material science, or industrial engineering. But I put them in the same office, mix them. I said, you guys learn from each other, because that's what the real world is. In the industry, when you have department, my experience is very clear. In one department, they have all kinds of background, so you better know how to deal with the different people. Also know their thinking, because it's helpful. Different discipline people think different because of the background. So turn out again very successful. The students are, most of them are very successful now.
That's great preparation, as you said. It also makes them great future members of ECS, and it's worth mentioning that we've had a relationship with Texas A&M for a long time. One of our more significant leaders, probably back to the 90s, late 90s, when you first got there, was Ralph White, who was, and his students were very active, highly published in ECS, and for reasons of how the electrochemistry connects to what you're teaching and the research activities at Texas A&M. There's a really nice connection there.
And it's also, I want to mention, interesting, in the, if you look history ECS, then the school I was involved all have strong connection with ECS. I don't know, maybe by chance, or maybe there's someone up there make it happen. It's Columbia has strong connection with the ECS in the history, and Texas A&M actually in the 80s, 90s, there are a lot of ECS members and very strong research achievement in this ECS field.
Yeah, that's your very unique experience. Your connection. We talk often in these podcasts about the family tree and the connections that you make. Primarily at the university, as a faculty has been there for a while, and then their students go out into the world. Some of them become faculty themselves, and you sort of expand your influence well beyond, as generations of students pass through. But in your case, you expand to other universities, both while you were being educated. And you mentioned Berkeley, I think, is a place where you spent some time, where obviously we have really strong connections in history. You do have a very unique. You were, I think, molded to become a leader in ECS through your experience, however that happened. I'd like to just move it now more towards your the science itself, so we can get a sense of some of the things that you do and what that means, in terms of the progress and the advancements you see happening. So tell us, what is the solid-state incandescent LED?
And solid-state incandescent LED, that's the one which we invented a couple of years ago. And it is a light-emitting device which based on the principle of incandescent, which is different from conventional LED. In the way, conventional LED is based on light emitting from the semiconductor layers. Those semiconductor layers, they have a band gap, and because electron hole combination through the p-n junction or quantum well or quantum dot structure, that emit light. So conventional LED has to emit light from structure of single crystal, and most of those single crystals are compound semiconductor. They emit light. They're very efficient compared with the conventional incandescent light and the fluorescent light. But solid state LED and is emit light because of the very small nano size. When I say nano, it's actually nano size. The length of the conductive path is less than 10 nanometer, usually a few nanometer. By passing current through the nano size conductive path, then the thermally excited, they emit light. So that way is similar to the principle of incandescent. But incandescent was invented more than 140 years ago, and there are many people who made great contribution, including probably the most well-known is Edison. And the light, today's light bulb is not much different from the 140 years ago. Basically, you have filament, apply voltage, current goes through it, get it hot, emit light, and black body emission. But incandescent light, today incandescent light, the typical example is the filament had diameter about 100 micron, length is about 1 to 2 meter. But imagine that one, if we shrink to instead 100 micron, a few nanometer size, length is 1 or 2 meter, and change become 10 nanometer or less. So we are shrinking it by many orders of magnitude to become very small. So that case, we can emit light. We don't need to have 110 volt. We can emit like 20 volt, 30 volt. And the device we can make small. How small is small? We can make a nano dot, for example. We can make a dot of 25 micron, 100 micron, 200, 300, 500 micron. They can emit light. So that's the new kind of device which people got excited when we published this one. Our first paper in the journal Applied Physics Letter, it was downloaded more than 1,000 times in 2 weeks. And later on, we got a lot of very good response and many invited talk on this topic. And this kind of device, what's good for? And there are several possibilities. And the light emitted is because different. It's based on thermal excitation of conductive filament. It's not the same as p-n junction type or semiconductor. So the emitted light is a wide spectrum. It's white light. The light distribution is very similar to sunlight in the visible range. And for conventional LED are usually almost single wavelength. And so based on that one, also in the visible range, and in addition to the lighting we can use, there are many other possibilities. For example, one possibility is for integrated circuit. Integrated circuit today, we know integrated will make a very small size, nanometer transistor. And eventually people now find out potential actually is already a problem. We can make many small transistors make on the chip. But the operation of the chip, the speed are now not limited by transistor. It's by signal transmits through the interconnection line. Now it's using copper. Because copper is very long, when on the outside the chip we give signal, the signal transmits through copper line to the transistor, tells transistor to turn it on, turn it off. But in the process, transistor can respond very quickly. But signals through the lines are delayed. And in this field, our people's dream, someday we don't transmit signal to the chip, within the chip, by the electric conduction. It's by photon, by light. And so it's the optical interconnect. But the optical interconnect, there are many studies. The fundamental issue is how do you beat build light emitting device on silicon. We'll talk about silicon technology. For silicon itself, it is impossible because it's indirect band gap. They cannot emit light. And for other conventional LED, they are made by compound semiconductor. This kind of compound semiconductor you want to build on silicon is very difficult. A lot of defects because the structure difference, the lattice mismatch difference. So that bothered people for all the years. But now this incandescent and solid-state incandescent LED has potential because solid incandescent is fabricated by the material which existing in current semiconductor IC chips. For example, the conductive parts is formed from high K materials, high dielectric material. The high K material now is widely used in those advanced non-solid transistor, field effect transistor. We use the same material. We have a number of ways to build to by electric stress generate conductive parts. So in other words, there is a potential now. We can use this kind of method, build device on the IC, make optical interconnection possible. Of course, there are a lot of work to do, but this is one of the seems to be very promising field now.
And this is the practical application, which is always what we're trying to dig out of all of this, is faster, greater capacity in computer transmission of data, and it sounds like requiring less power to do so. Is that fair synopsis?
And for that's our ideal IC. Ideal IC we want to have transistor factor, signal delay almost non-exist, and cheap to make, easy to fabricate at low price. So any new development we have to satisfy those requirements. Had to be manufacturable, can be manufactured, and not only manufacture, it's the mass production capability. We don't want make a chips takes a very expensive equipment for a long time to fabricate. We want the mass production capability. We want to be low cost. We want to be compatible. If anything new introduced into current existing process, it has to be compatible with current materials and current fabrication process. And so those are requirements. This the optical interconnection, which is we invented. Now it can satisfy some of the requirements, and we are still working on details because this usually takes several years to go through problem one by one. But at least this beginning shows promising for that.
And can you describe, maybe in general terms, how you think? So you know that one of the priorities with ECS is the connections that we're making to renewable energy. And how is this work having any effect on our interests as an organization, as an advocate for renewable energy?
That's a good point. The one which I mentioned previously earlier. When in the university and in my graduate school, all this, I mentioned one thing is not only I focus on the field for my field, for example, chemical engineering or my research topic. I always have interest to contact with different people. And for example, my roommate was physics major and had many friends in electrical engineering, material science. I contact with them during conversation, learn a lot of things. Those interdisciplinary later on showed a great, tremendous contribution to my career in the study. For example, the renewable energy, there are all kinds of renewable energy. And one of them is solid-state based, like solar cell. Even solar cell, they are solid-state based and non-solid-state based. Cell. But so when one of the projects which I work on is solar cell for solid state based, actually those principles are related to integrated circuit, related to thin film transistor I work on. For example, thin film transistor, which I in IBM worked for many years, is made of amorphous silicon. That's thin film transistor, the one for the TV, which we watch every day. For large area, amorphous silicon based thin film transistor. When you look solar cell, it's parallel to development of thin film transistor and integrated circuit. In a way, solar cell, even solid solar cell, we can say two types. One is based on the single or polycrystalline semiconductor. Those solar cells usually have very high efficiency, but usually are expensive because you grow single crystal, you need an expensive substrate, and the grow process can be toxic, can be tedious, and can be slow. But however, their efficiency are very high. Another type of solid-state thin film transistor is another type of solar cell is a thin film based solar cell, such as amorphous silicon based solar cell. So those kind of solar cell disadvantage is efficiency lower than crystalline solar cell. Advantage is those solar cells we can produce at low cost and over extremely large area at high throughput. Just like when we compare IC with thin film transistor, IC is based on single crystal silicon, and thin film transistor is based on deposition of amorphous silicon. Amorphous silicon thin film transistor speed is lower than IC, but amorphous silicon can be fabricated on large area. How large? I'll give you an example. Today's production, when we make a panel for TV, the most advanced production are made. Transistors are made on the glass a size of 3 meter by 3 meter roughly. Imagine one piece of 3 meter by 3 meter. So in principle, today's TV we have on flat panel, we have it at home 60, 70 inch. In theory, if your house is big enough, your pocket deep enough, you can buy the TV of 3 meter by 3 meter. And so the solar cell is the same thing. Parallel to it, the thin film solar cell, that's why the area which we're working on, and we're trying to improve the efficiency in all the possible ways we can, from materials, from fabrication point of view. But this again seems to unrelated subject. Actually, the fundamentals are same. So that's interdisciplinary training, which I gained, which are very helpful.
Yes, as I said earlier, it seems to always come back to that in discussions, and that's whether we're talking for people who are more involved with the classic electrochemistry, or in your case, those that are working in the solid-state science areas. So I'd like to, before we start wrapping up the podcast, I'd like to actually get some of your thoughts about publication of the science, because you are the first editor from our journals that we've done this, and I think you have a very interesting and inside perspective. So first of all, I guess it's an open-ended question about the state of peer-reviewed publications, but then obviously the follow-on for us is going to be what do you think about the influence of open access and our initiatives in that area?
Okay, this is actually a very important topic. That's also I've worked, getting involved with ECS and even other organizations. Because the internet's explosion, so everyone can get access to internet. So everyone can download information from internet, but that's a good part. But the bad part is you need to make choice. Good information, bad information. And very often we see even the big picture of society, a lot of problems come from internet, because everyone can download the internet and for all the information to support what he or she says. But in reality, internet information not all equal. The journal part, for ECS journal and some respectable journal, the advantage is we have the peer review process. the peer review process, of course, like any other system, is not perfect, but in generally it's fair. So peer review process, and in ECS journals we have strong peer review process. So papers will at least go to 2, 3, or even more reviewer. So in generally, an accepted paper are scientific, is sound, and is strong. While those non-peer reviewed publications, very often, some can be very good, but very often, especially on the internet part, very often not reliable. So for the ECS part, I think the journal is the reason journal is so successful because of the peer review process. And at least you had, just like exam, you had to pass a few exams before it can be accepted for publication. And so for the publication, I think ECS publication is credible. People, if you cite ECS journals, in general they feel this is a reliable source. And for the open access, that's the trend, that's the way to go. And ECS adopt to it very quickly, that's good. But even in the open access condition, we do not compromise our journal's quality. And I think that's what we have to stick to, and that's we have been successful. We want to make the information we have come from ECS is highly researchable. People can cite with science, and while we have a broad range of people who can read it.
Well, right on. I think that's exactly what we're hoping to achieve through open access, is to get the greatest dissemination as possible with the scrutiny that we get through peer review. We're planning to maintain a level of quality and reliability in the publishing that we're putting out there. And of course you were a big part of that for 8 or 9 years in your role as an editor, and so we like to think that actually it creates greater opportunities for us, and if we stay to our fundamentals of peer review, we'll continue to be an important filter and have an important role. But that's really a question. Do you think we have an important role in the future, and what do you think that role is?
Good question. I have thought about this question for many times, actually quite a few years. What's the ECS different from other society? What's this journal different from other journals? From 30 or almost 40 years experience, I can tell the unique part of ECS is interdisciplinary. ECS, when you go to conference, you see ECS papers. They are authored by people with all kinds of background, the engineering, science, while the fundamental is science-based, and the science-based is reliable, repeatable. That's why it's popular. And for the science-based ECS, in the society, we have so many people. If you look at ECS members or people attend a conference, different from many other societies, is we have diversified people. Diversified in the way of people with, I mentioned, of electrical, materials, chemical, chemistry, physics, and the industrial engineering, almost all the field you can think about. They come to society, they publish the paper based on the science. And I always talk to students and to people joking about the real problem comes in the real world. When the problem comes, you have to solve it by whatever science knowledge you have, and not your discipline alone, because the discipline are created by human beings for the convenience, but the problem is created naturally. We use whatever we can learn to solve the problem. What ECS provides this opportunity for people to show their scientific contribution, to share with their friend and their point of view based on science. And so the journal definitely, I can tell, will last for a long, long time with good reputation, because we are only based on science, not based on some artificially created specific principle. And the society, and again, is open to all the people who are willing to use science to solve the problem, for the current problem, for future problem.
Yes, well, good to hear you make those comments. Of course, you have been an important part of what we do for a very long time now. But I think if you can say anything about ECS, and you said it very well, it's an organization that's very focused on the mission and very objective about what we're trying to accomplish, which is very simple: create opportunities for people to advance the science. And I'm glad you think that we have a future in that. Before we wrap up the podcast, I think it's interesting to for you to share maybe just a little glimpse of yourself by pointing out the simple question is, what's the proudest moment of your career? Would you willing to share with us what you think is the thing that's stands out, or maybe there's several things?
And again, that's interesting. Believe it or not, every time I did something really good, for example, we invent some new product to make transistor, or make a plasma etching copper, or even solid state incandescent, or the memory device. Every time when I did something good, feel happy, I always joking, sometimes talk to my wife, say, "Oh, that's it. I think that's the best work I did." But a few years later, I had something new. I will say, "Oh, this is the best, the happy time." So let's come to the general experience. To do science, then every stage you do your best. You achieve what you can feel happy, proud, but never ended there. And a few years later, you'll find you have another new breakthroughs you are so proud of. And I guess that's a human's life. That's what goes on.
So many moments, just one following the other, as you
Right.
you reach the. Oh, that's great, and I think that's a good note to end on. For me, this has been a really fascinating story of your life, and a great your description of how you progressed in the career, and how you describe your work in the science has been such a valuable and interesting thing to share. So I appreciate very much your taking the time with us today. Thank you. We were with Yue Kuo, who is currently the holder of the Dow Professorship at Texas A&M University's Department of Chemical Engineering. The department is on Twitter at TAMU Engineering. You can find ECS on Twitter at ECS.org. Or listen to more episodes of our podcast by searching ECS Podcast on iTunes. Or just go to our website, electrochem.org. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to share my experience, my view with people in ECS and other part of the world. And I hope my experience will be helpful for some people, especially young people who are developing their career in research or in production. Thank you.
Thank you.